Assalamu alaikum. In the heart of the Abbasid Empire, when the world was veiled in darkness and ignorance, a golden light began to rise, the light of knowledge, justice, and faith. From the banks of the Tigris River stood the magnificent city of Baghdad, a city destined to become the center of the world. And among its marble halls and glittering minarets ruled a man whose name would echo through centuries, Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph who led the Ummah into its greatest age of learning and prosperity. His reign was not just about power or wealth, it was about building a civilization that reflected the beauty and wisdom of Islam itself. In the 8th century, while Europe was wrapped in the darkness of its Middle Ages, a new light began to shine in the East. It was a light of knowledge, of civilization, of faith, a light that would illuminate the world for centuries. And at the center of that light stood one man, Harun al-Rashid, the 5th Caliph of the Abbasid dynasty. Harun al-Rashid's name means Aaron the rightly guided. To some, he was a legendary ruler whose name became a symbol of justice, culture, and piety. To others, he was the embodiment of the Islamic world's greatest era, an age where faith and intellect walked hand in hand. He ruled from 786 to 809 CE, and during his reign, the Abbasid Caliphate reached its zenith, politically, culturally, and spiritually. His empire stretched from North Africa to Central Asia. Baghdad, his capital, became the greatest city on earth, a beacon of light in an age of shadows. Harun al-Rashid was born in 763 CE in the city of Ray, near modern-day Tehran, Iran. He was the son of Caliph al-Mahdi and al-Khayzuran, a woman of remarkable intelligence and influence. His mother played a crucial role in his upbringing, shaping him into a man of thought and principle. From a young age, Harun was surrounded by scholars, poets, and commanders. He was educated in theology, literature, history, jurisprudence, and the sciences. He memorized the Quran, studied Arabic grammar and poetry, and was trained in statecraft and warfare. As a young prince, Harun displayed both courage and wisdom. He accompanied his father on military expeditions and quickly earned a reputation for leadership. He was appointed governor of several provinces, gaining experience in administration and diplomacy. Before becoming caliph, Harun led a campaign against the Byzantine Empire, the Battle of the Cilician Gates, and achieved great victory. He returned to Baghdad in glory, earning the title al-Rashid, meaning the rightly guided. When his father al-Mahdi passed away, the caliphate went briefly to Harun's brother al-Hadi. But al-Hadi's rule was short-lived. He died in 786 CE under mysterious circumstances, and the throne passed to Harun. At just 22 years old, Harun al-Rashid became the most powerful man in the Muslim world. Despite his youth, Harun was mature beyond his years. He inherited a vast and complex empire, wealthy, diverse, and full of challenges. But he also inherited the foundation of a great civilization laid down by his Abbasid predecessors. With wisdom and faith, he built upon that foundation and turned it into something extraordinary. His reign would be remembered as the Golden Age of Islam. When Harun al-Rashid ascended to power, Baghdad was already the Abbasid capital. But under his leadership, it became the envy of the world. The city was founded by his grandfather, Caliph al-Mansur, in 762 CE, and its circular design symbolized unity and divine perfection. Under Harun, Baghdad grew into a metropolis of nearly 1 million people, scholars, merchants, artisans, and travelers from every corner of the earth. Its markets overflowed with goods from India, China, Africa, and Europe. Perfumes, silks, spices, and books were traded side by side. The streets were lined with schools, libraries, mosques, and palaces. Everywhere, the hum of learning could be heard. The city was not just the political capital of the caliphate, it was the intellectual capital of the world. One of Harun al-Rashid's greatest legacies was his deep love for knowledge. He believed that learning was a form of worship, a way to understand Allah's creation. To support this vision, he established and funded institutions that preserved and expanded human knowledge. Among them was the Bayt al-Hikmah, or House of Wisdom, a library, translation center, and academy unlike anything the world had ever seen. Greek, Persian, Indian, and Roman texts were collected and translated into Arabic. Mathematics, medicine, astronomy, chemistry, geography, philosophy all found a new home in the House of Wisdom. Translators, scientists, and philosophers worked day and night. They preserved the knowledge of ancient civilizations and expanded upon it, laying the groundwork for the scientific revolutions that would come centuries later. This was the beginning of the Islamic Golden Age, and it all began under the patronage of Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid was known not only for his wealth and power, but also for his sense of justice. Many stories are told of the Caliph disguising himself at night to walk the streets of Baghdad, observing the condition of his people. It is said that he once overheard a poor man complaining about an unjust official. The next day, that official was summoned and punished. Harun's rule was guided by the principle that the Caliph must be the servant of his people, not their master. He appointed fair judges, ensured that the poor were fed, and maintained strict control over corruption in his administration. His court included both religious scholars and wise ministers who advised him with honesty. His justice became so famous that his name appeared in poetry, legends, and even in the European imagination. In later centuries, his figure would appear in the famous tales of 1001 Nights, symbolizing wisdom, justice, and prosperity. A key element in Harun al-Rashid's success was his reliance on capable administrators. Among the most notable were the Barmakids, a powerful Persian family of scholars and viziers. The most famous of them was Yahya ibn Khalid al-Barmaki, who became Harun's mentor and vizier. Yahya and his sons, Jafar and Fadl, helped run the empire efficiently and promoted scholarship, arts, and learning. They were known for their generosity and wisdom, and for years they served Harun loyally. But their influence grew so great that some began to fear they overshadowed the Caliph himself. Eventually, suspicion and political intrigue poisoned their relationship. In a dramatic turn, Harun ordered the downfall of the Barmakids. Their wealth was confiscated, and Jafar, once like a son to Harun, was executed. This tragic event marked a turning point in Harun's reign. Though the Caliph remained powerful, his court never fully recovered the harmony it once had. Under Harun al-Rashid, the Abbasid Empire was immensely wealthy. Trade routes from Africa to China poured riches into Baghdad. Taxes from distant provinces funded massive public works, gardens, and palaces. Harun's court became a symbol of refinement, filled with poets, musicians, and artists. He loved literature and often rewarded poets who could move his heart with words. Stories say that his palace glowed with golden lamps and fountains, and his guests dined on the finest dishes from across the empire. But despite this grandeur, Harun remained deeply spiritual. He never forgot that all power comes from Allah and that a ruler's ultimate accountability lies before him. He performed Hajj to Makkah several times, often traveling with enormous caravans that displayed both his piety and his power. During one of his pilgrimages, it is said he stood before the Kaaba and cried out, "O Allah, you are the King of Kings. Forgive your servant, Harun." Even amid his luxury, he feared Allah more than he loved his throne, and that fear kept his heart humble. Harun al-Rashid was not only a ruler, but also a diplomat. His empire maintained relations with kingdoms across the world, from Byzantium to China. One of the most famous stories is his exchange of gifts with Charlemagne, the emperor of the Franks in Europe. They sent envoys to one another, exchanging rare treasures and letters of friendship. Among Harun's gifts was a magnificent water clock, a mechanical marvel that astonished the Europeans. He also sent them an elephant named Abul Abbas, whose arrival in Europe caused great wonder. These exchanges symbolize the prestige of the Islamic world, a civilization far more advanced, cultured, and organized than anything in Europe at that time. Beyond politics, Harun al-Rashid was a man of deep emotion and complexity. He loved poetry and often invited scholars and poets to his court for discussion. He valued intelligence and wit, and even jesters and storytellers found a place by his side. But he was also known for moments of reflection and sadness. He once said, "Every joy I feel reminds me of death. Despite his authority, he remained aware of how temporary worldly life was. He surrounded himself with wise companions who reminded him of the hereafter. Many times he would sit alone, reading the Quran and weeping softly, reflecting on his responsibilities before Allah. As Harun al-Rashid grew older, the burden of leadership grew heavier. Rebellions and unrest began to rise in the far provinces of the empire. In particular, a revolt in Khorasan in modern-day Iran demanded his attention. Rebellions and unrest began to rise in the far provinces of the empire. In particular, a revolt in Khorasan in modern-day Iran demanded his attention. Determined to restore order, Harun personally led an army to the east. But the journey proved too much for his health. He fell ill near the city of Tus in the region of Khorasan. It is said that in his final moments, he whispered verses of the Quran, reminding those around him that kings and caliphs are only servants of Allah. He was buried in Tus, the same city where 2 centuries later, the great scholar Imam al-Ghazali would be born. The death of Harun al-Rashid marked the end of an era. The Abbasid Empire would continue under his sons, but internal divisions eventually weakened it. The death of Harun al-Rashid marked the end of an era. The Abbasid Empire would continue under his sons, but internal divisions eventually weakened it. Yet the legacy Harun left behind endured for centuries. He transformed Baghdad into the world's center of knowledge and culture. Under him, Islam was not just a religion, it was a civilization, a way of life, a light to the nations. He supported scholars, poets, and scientists who shaped the course of human history. In the Arabian Nights, Harun al-Rashid appears as the wise and just Caliph, wandering his city in disguise, discovering truth and justice among his people. His name lived on not only in history, but in legend. In the Arabian Nights, Harun al-Rashid appears as the wise and just Caliph, wandering his city in disguise, discovering truth and justice among his people. When rulers saw themselves as servants of Allah, and when the world looked to the Muslims for guidance, wisdom, and light. And so, as the centuries passed and empires rose and fell, the legacy of Harun al-Rashid continued to shine like a distant star. The libraries he built, the scholars he nurtured, and the justice he upheld became a foundation for generations that followed. His reign reminds us that true leadership is not measured by the size of one's empire, but by the light one leaves behind. May Allah grant us leaders who value knowledge as he did, who rule with compassion and fairness, and who strive to uplift the Ummah with wisdom and faith. Ameen.